Hey, this is Kevin from Kevin's Guides, and welcome to Chapter 4 of the Intro to Joomla series. In this chapter, we're going to learn about editing articles in Joomla. So let's head over to the website and take a look at a few things. So first off, we have articles, which are pieces of content on our website. They can be informative articles, it could be a news post, a blog post, just a page by itself. But basically, they are HTML documents that Joomla stores in the database, and we display them on our website. So right now I'm looking at an article for the 4th chapter of this series. Joomla organizes articles into categories. So the default category is just a category called uncategorized. So in the next chapter, we're going to talk about how to manage categories. But for right now, let's just take a look at this kind of structure that I have going on here. So categories, we can have an unlimited number of subcategories. So the categories at the top are called the top level categories. They are the most important ones, the most general categories. If we were to be categorizing, say, a website that had articles on different types of plants, we might have a top level category just called plants, and then under that we might have a subcategory for trees, and then under that subcategory we might have other subcategories for different kinds of trees, and then we can put articles into any of those categories or their subcategories. It's possible to have articles and subcategories all within one category, so they don't have to be just articles or just categories. We can have one subcategory that contains both more subcategories and more articles. And with the category layout, when we have a category in another category, so here we have a subcategory that is a child of the top level category. And this is called a parent-child relationship. Those are the terms we normally use there. The parent is the more general, higher level category, and the child is the subcategory. Then this subcategory down here would be a child element of this subcategory over here. The other way we can organize content in Joomla is by tags. So Joomla does have a tagging system. You may have seen these on other blogs and websites where you can just put things or assign articles to a certain tag or tags. So we give our articles tags, and it's kind of more like a pool or a swarm or a cloud. You could think of it that way, because one article like this one might have two separate tags. So instead of having a linear relationship like the articles and categories have, if we have tags, we can assign multiple different articles that aren't concretely or specifically related. Maybe they have some common theme going on, but we don't have a good way to categorize them. We can use tags instead. So it's more like a pool, and we will talk about tags in a separate video. I'm mainly going to be focusing on categories. Tags are kind of like a secondary way to organize content in Joomla. Now you can use categories and tags together, or just tags, or just categories. So what you decide to do is ultimately up to you, and it depends on the needs of your website and what type of content you are trying to organize. So let's go ahead and check out our test site and take a look at the article manager and the article editor. So I have XAMPP running. I have my test site running. I'm already logged into the backend. Now there's a few ways we can get to the article manager. From the home dashboard, you can just click articles. And from the main menu, we can go to articles or content and then articles, and it takes us to the same page. Now, since I don't have any articles yet, I just get this message saying that no articles have been created. But once we do have articles here, they'll all be listed in a list with some details about each article. So let's go ahead and make a new article. We can do that, again, one of two ways. We can click this little plus icon in the menu, or we can click the new button in the toolbar. And this brings us to the article editor. So the article editor has the main text of the article itself. So this is TinyMCE, that what you see is what you get editor, where we can just start writing any type of document we want or paste a document in here and start formatting it into HTML. And then at the top, we have some settings. On the side, we have some settings. And then in all these different tabs, we have even more settings. So there are lots of settings that go along with the articles in Joomla. Let's go over the most important ones. Looks like some of these came from my Kevin's Guide website for whatever reason. Guess Vivaldi remembered it. Anyways, I'm going to call this my first blog post since this is a fake blog, and that's my title. My alias is going to be just first-blog-post. The alias, importantly, becomes part of the page's URL, the address of the page. So this gets shown in the page address. So we don't want to have any spaces in here, and we want to use all lowercase. If you don't save an alias, it will automatically generate one based on what you put in the title. So if I just save this as is without an alias, it's going to just be the title with dashes in place of the spaces. And of course, it's all in lowercase. Try to think of a short, easy to remember alias for your pages if you can. Over on the right here, we can see the status of the article, whether it's published, unpublished, archived, or trashed. We don't have to worry about archive too much. Trash is if you don't want to have the article on your website anymore, you're getting rid of it. Published and unpublished are the two you'll probably end up using the most. So if I'm working on an article and I'm not ready for it to go live yet, I might save it as unpublished. Then when it's ready to be displayed on the front end, I'll set it to published. The category, that's the category the article is in, and it's uncategorized for now. We're going to talk about managing categories in the next chapter. Featured. Featured, yes or no? If it's a featured article, by default, it will show up on the Joomla's homepage under the featured articles view. So that's a menu item type, and we'll get into menu item types later. But by default, just know that if we feature it, it's going to show up on the homepage. So let's go ahead and set that to yes. And I'm actually going to paste some pre-made content that I had for this article. So I paste that in the article editor. It just says, hi, welcome to my blog. This is my first post. Hope you like it. And then, oops, a little bit about me. Let me undo whatever I just did there. Just underline that for some reason. Okay, so let's save that again. And now that it's featured and it has some text, let's check out the front end and see what happened here. Since I saved that, now we have my first blog post. We have some details about it, the author name, the category, when it was published, how many page views it's had, which are known as hits, and then the text of the article itself. So now it's being displayed on my homepage. If I click the link in the title, it takes me to the single article page. So by default, Joomla shows all the featured articles on the homepage. If I had multiple featured articles, they would all be showing on this homepage. Right now, I only have my first blog post, so that's the only one that shows up. And then when I click the title, it takes me just to that one particular article instead of showing multiple articles. Also notice on my URL here, the breadcrumbs, it says I'm at home, the uncategorized category, and then my first blog post. That has to do with the menu as well, and we're going to talk more about the menu again in a later chapter. Back to article editing. The access level, that's who's allowed to view your article. Public means anyone can view it. Guest means only people who are not logged in can view it. Registered means only people who are registered and logged in can view it. Special, that's different user groups, like pretty much anyone who's not one of those other user groups. These can be like editors, people who are writing content, authors, other people with more elevated permissions on your website, administrators. Then super users, that is just my account here. I'll leave that as public for now. Tags, if I want to add a tag to an article, I can just start typing a tag here. So I could just say Like this could be a tag for blog posts. And note, the note field is a saved short message, and you don't have to put anything in here if you don't want to, but I'm going to say maybe just a short description of what this article is. Now this would be viewable to other authors and editors internally, so if other people are accessing and modifying your website, it might be useful to put some notes in, or like to do, add new section to this article on important stuff. The version note, every time an article is saved, or anything saved that supports versioning, we can give a note with the version. So for this, let's say I want to take this About Kevin text and make it a heading. So I'm going over to paragraphs, heading. These are some formatting options, and let's make this a level 2 heading, so heading 2. And I say version note, made heading 2. That's not the best version note, but it'll do for now. And then I save it. Article saved. So now you'll know that the note stayed from before, but the version note disappeared because the version note was saved with that last particular version that I just previously saved. This would be the new version note for this current version. So if I save again, and let's say I take this About Kevin text and I underline it, and now I have a new version note that says, I underlined the heading. I save that. Now what I can do is I can go into this versions tool. So in the toolbar, after you save the article for the first time, you'll be able to see this. If you haven't saved your article yet, you won't be able to see this option. I click versions, and now I can see every time I saved this article. So first time I saved it, second time, third time, fourth time, all the dates. The star indicates the current version of the article, and I can see my notes from before. So made heading 2. I underline the heading. I can also see the character count, so I can see how long the article is getting with each save. Now if I go back and I check one of these, so let's say I check the one where I made the heading 2, I preview that. Now I can see, okay, it is a heading now. It says About Kevin as a heading. Now if I preview the current one, it's going to have the underlined version. If I go back to an older version before those 2 saves, I preview that, and About Kevin is back to how it was. So I have different versions of how the article was at, or the state of an article, and I can revert to that version if I want. So if you have multiple authors and editors working on your website and someone messes something up, we can look at the version history, find the version we need, and restore it. And when we restore it, it's going to take us back to that version, and then we can save it. We refresh the home page, and we're still back on that version where I didn't have that heading. That's a short demo of how versions work in Joomla 4. Now let's talk a little bit more about the article editor itself, TinyMCE. So notice this button on the bottom that says Toggle Editor. If I click this, it just shows me the raw HTML that the editor has generated for us. Turn the editor back on. Now I have my editor window. So this is pretty similar to any other text editor that you might have used in the past, like WordPad, or even a dumbed down version of Microsoft Office or Microsoft Word. And it works pretty similarly. If I want to make some text bold, I can just select it and make it bold. If I want to italicize something, select it and italicize. Underline, strike through. Those are some pretty standard things. Here we have the alignment settings. So if I select some text or just click on a section of text, it's going to align that whole section. If I go down to this next paragraph, I want to center that, I can do that. Let's put that back to left for now. Those are the alignment options. These are some formatting options. To format text, we can just click on whatever block of text it's in. So every time we hit space, we're creating like a new block of text or of HTML. So it's a separate element from before. So this is one paragraph element. This is another paragraph element. So when I click on anywhere in this first or second paragraph element here, and I change the formatting, let's say make it a heading 4, it's going to make that entire line a heading 4. If I want to go back to paragraph, we just have to go back. And let's see, does this have, yes, blocks paragraph, and then it turns it back into a paragraph for us. So those are basic editing tools for the format of the text. If we click these little dots, we're going to see some more options. So we see this says paragraph, and that's the formats menu. We said this is paragraph, this is the blocks menu. So the blocks is just part of, it's very similar to formats. It's going to achieve basically the same thing. Let's see if we do block there. So it does the same thing as this. It just gives us a little bit less options. Here we can change the fonts. So these are all the default web fonts that we can use. So we want to change it to Times New Roman. We just select the text or anywhere we put our cursor, and we can change the text. Now, if we select that, Query or New, it looks like we do have to select the entire section of text we want to change for the fonts. It doesn't look like it applies it to just the block we have it in. So if I just do Arial Black, okay, yeah. So it's making a span element. This is this has to do with HTML. So for now, just know you have to select things to change the font of it. In general, you shouldn't really have to change the font very often. You want to use something that's readable, and whatever your template defaults to is generally the one you're going to want to use. You don't want to be changing the fonts constantly on your website just for fun, kind of like I'm doing here. We can change the text size. If I want to make something bigger, I can do that. If I want to make something smaller, I can do that too. Now again, we probably want to leave the text size as the defaults if possible. Your template will manage your font sizes. You don't want to just take some regular text like about Kevin and make it really big and say, okay, now this is a heading. Instead, what you should have done here, or what I should have done here, was to use the heading block instead, rather than increasing the font size and making it bold manually. So whenever possible, use the formats and the blocks menu options instead of just changing the font size and the things like that manually. That has to do with search engine optimization. We'll get more into that later. These other settings, you just have to play around with. They're all pretty straightforward. I'm going to assume you know how to create a list. That's to create lists. So element 1, hit enter, 2, hit tab. There, now I have a sub item, sub list item, so on and so forth. If I want a numbered list, I can create a numbered list. If I want to increase and decrease indents, I can do that. It's just like any other word processor. We even have undo and redo buttons. If I want to create a link, I can just select some text. So that says Pennsylvania. And I type in or paste my link. So let's say that takes me to pa.gov. Save it, and now I have a link. Images. We're going to talk about the media manager in not the next chapter, but kind of like a sub-chapter. I'm going to do a separate video on the media manager because there's a lot to that. We don't actually want to normally use this button to insert images unless you know directly where they are located on your server. There's an easier way to do it. So don't worry about images for right now. Any other important things here? Tables. Tables are not mobile friendly by default in Joomla. If you make this table, it's not going to look very good when you shrink down the website or the web page onto mobile view. It's going to look stretched out or very compressed, or it's just not going to look right. So I would recommend to avoid using tables if possible, unless you find an extension that does a better job at table management for you. This is all pretty standard stuff. We're not going to talk about any of that for now. So just play around with the editor and see what you like. Do note that there are other ways to access all these menu items. There's like multiple ways to insert links. If I select Overwatch here and I do insert link, it brings up that same link page from before. So if you prefer to use the menu instead, that's an option. But in general, that is how TinyMCE works. It's just like any other text editor that you may have used in the past, just maybe a little more simplified. Let's check out the Images and Links tab. First, let me save this, my horrendous looking article. I do recommend saving fairly often, especially if you make any major changes to the article, because you never know if your internet's going to go down or if the site's going to crash or what's going to happen. So do save often. So I have two image settings here. Now there's the intro image and the full article image. Let's see what happens when I set something as an intro image. This might be easier just to demonstrate. So this is the media manager. I'm going to go into more details on how the media manager works later. But let's say I want to upload a video. There's some stuff I was selling on eBay. And I have this, what do I have? I have a landscape image. And I'm going to select that as my intro image. Then I'm going to select another image as my full article image. They're going to be different images. For my full article image, I'm going to select a picture of my dog friends. So I upload that. Here's my dog friends. And I'm going to save my article. So let's take a look at what happened on the front end now. If I go to the home page, you can see that the intro image is displayed, but not the full article image. So I don't see the picture of the dogs. Now when I click my first blog post, the intro image is gone, but the full article image, the one of the dogs, has appeared. So that is the difference between the intro image and the full article image. The intro image is displayed when you're not actually in the article itself. It's like a preview of the article normally. And then the full article image is what's displayed when you are actually on the article itself. That might be useful if you're creating a blog or something and you want to use that functionality, especially the intro image. I use intro images and full article images on Kevin's guides. So this one with the little dudes on the typewriter, that is my full article image. But then if I go back to my category, we can see that these are all intro images and they're formatted differently. So this is more like squarish for my intro image, and then my full article image is actually more landscape, so it spans the entire width of the page. Links, don't worry about links. I don't know why you'd want to insert links this way. It's easier just to do it from the editor, then you can put them exactly where you want. One other thing I do want to mention, since we just talked about full article images, and I was showing you those kind of two different views, let's take a look at the CMS content. So this is where we can insert items from Joomla itself. And this is where we can do things like menus. We can access the media manager. This is how we would want to, if we wanted to insert media into our article, we would do it that way. The feature I want to tell you about is this page break, read more. So a page break splits your article into multiple pages. So this could be my second page. So if I want to have an article that has multiple pages, I can insert a page break. Then when I go to that article, now you'll see I have an article index, and I can navigate to different pages of that article. I can also see all the pages on one screen if I want to. So that's what page break does. I don't normally use page break. I normally make separate articles if I need to use page break. So I'm going to just go into HTML and delete that because that's the easiest way for me to do that. I got rid of that page break. Let's take a look at read more. What does read more do? If I insert read more, it puts this red line in that indicates the read more break. Let's save that. The read more break, what that does, it's just like a page break, but it separates your article into two sections. It creates a full text version of your page and an intro text. The intro text is that area above that red line, and that's now what is displayed on my home page. So everything above that red line is the intro text. So imagine you have multiple articles on the home page. You might not want to show multiple full articles all together. That would be a pretty long page. Instead, you can insert page breaks, or not page breaks, read more breaks into the articles, and then you can only have like the first few paragraphs, or maybe the first paragraph, just some introductory text like, this article is about this, read more. This article is about this, read more. And then when people click that read more button, it takes them back to the full version of the article. So that is what the read more option does. Take a look at some other options here. The layout in the options tab, this has to do with some overrides and template options. So right now, just use global default. There's only one article layout we can use by default. The title is what is displayed here. So my first blog post. If I want to hide that for some reason, I can hide it. And now when I refresh my page, that disappears. The link title, that is yes, that's where if you click the title, it links back to the article. Now, it doesn't work on the page itself because we're already on that page, but if I go back to any other page and I click on that, it's going to take me to the article itself. So that's what link titles does. Use tags show. Let's see, do I have tags showing? Did I save the tag I made? Content tags, I guess not. So tags, blog posts. I'm not sure what's up with tags. It seems like sometimes they just randomly disappear for no reason. Maybe it's because maybe I forgot it with a version or something. But anyway, if I save the tag with my article, now I have the tag showing on the front end with the article. I click blog posts and it takes me to a page displaying all of the articles that have that particular tag. That's how tags work. If I don't want to show tags, I can hide them. The intro text, show or hide. So it's always going to show it, even if I set this to hide on the front page. Let me just close out of my website because I keep accidentally going over there. So it's always going to show it no matter what. If it's show or hide on the front page when you're not actually on the article, what that option does is it hides the intro text on the article itself. So now that I went to the article itself, it hid everything above that read more line. I normally like to just show everything on the page itself, including the intro text, so I will leave that as global show. The position of the article info, above or below. Right now it's above. If I set it to below, just gonna move these details. Now instead of being at the top, they're at the bottom. Article info title, that's the thing that just says details. Category, so it shows us a link to the category in the details. If we want that in there, we can. Link to the category, parent category hide. That's all related to what categories get showed up on the article page. The author's information, whether we want to show that in the article details. The create date, the modify date, and the publish date. So there's 3 different dates here. Create date is the date and time that the article was made. Modify is when it was last modified, and publish is when we change the status from unpublished to publish. We can show 3 different dates, all the dates, whatever dates we want. Other options, navigation, use global show. With that set, I only have 1 article on this page right now, but if I have multiple articles in the same category and this use navigation is on, it's going to show a link at the bottom to my next article in that category. If I want that on, leave it on. Normally I actually turn that one off. This is just per this 1 article, and I will show you another way we can modify it for all the articles. Hits, that's the amount of page views a page has or an article has. Hits are kind of not a good way to really measure actual traffic, so I'm setting that to hide. Unauthorized links, no. Position links above, that's where those links that we set in the images and links tab show up. Read more text, if you wanted to say check out more or more on this or something else, you can do that. Browser page title, right now it just says my first blog post. It uses the title of the article. If you want to change that for some reason, you can change the browser page title by setting something else there. So those are all the options under the Options tab, in addition to all the other options I told you about. The Publishing tab, this has information on when we finish publishing articles. So if you have time-sensitive articles, you can start them at certain dates. If you have contracts, if you're a blogger, you might have to release a certain number of articles, and you might have them all pre-written, and then you can just schedule one to show up every week on Tuesday at 5 o'clock if you want to. You can set when they start being featured, when they're done being featured. If you want to, you can modify the time they were created. We can use an alias. If I want to say this was created by Bill instead of Kevin, I could just say Bill there, and then when I save it and I refresh, now instead of saying written by Kevin, it says written by Bill. So if you're writing an article for someone else or you just want to make up a fake name, you can use that. Metadata, we're going to skip metadata for now. That has to do with search engine optimization. I briefly touched on some of these in the previous chapter with the global configuration. These are largely the same as those options, but it's specific to this one article. The edit screen, leave that alone. Permissions, leave that alone. So let's just save and close that for now. So now we're back on the article manager page, and we can see that there are a lot more, well, there's a lot more details being shown here since I actually have an article now. I can see the amount of times I hit that page, and that's why hits are not a good way to judge traffic, because I just refreshed that page 16 times just to prove to you what these different features do. That doesn't mean 16 different people viewed my article. I was the only one who viewed that article. That's why I don't really like hits that much. We can filter our articles by whether they're featured or not, by whether they're published or unpublished, by what category they're in, by the tag, by the author, by the access level. There's lots of different filters. If you have dozens or hundreds or thousands of articles, you can use filters to easily access them. The search field, that is a quick way to search articles by their title, content, or author, or ID. The ID is the number of the article as it was created in Joomla. It's an internal ID that has to do with the database. You don't really need to worry about the ID too much, but it's like an internal numeric identifier for the article. So when I create a second article, it's going to have an ID of 2. The next one would have an ID of 3, and so on and so forth. Now let's check out the options, the article component options. So now I'm back on this settings page that looks kind of like the global configuration, but instead of being in the global config, I am now in the articles component option. And this will be the default global settings for all the articles. The articles tab, that is for the article pages. There's different ways we can view articles. There's different like list layouts, categories layout, all different layouts related to this articles component. But for now, we're just talking about a single article page. So the articles tab is the one we want to use. And this has all those same options that I showed you in the article editor. It's just if I change them here, these will be the defaults for every article I create. If you don't want to individually change them for each article, which you probably in general won't want to, you can change them globally for every single article on this page. The same as the article options pretty much that were set in the article itself. But don't confuse them. If I set something in the article itself, it's going to override the settings from those global options under that options item there. All right, so now I'm going to create a second article, and this is just going to be like an About Us page. Instead of making this a featured article, I want this just to be a dedicated page to telling users about the website. My alias is going to be about. I'm going to say, this is my cool website. About me, blah, blah, blah. For testing purposes, that'll do. You can write an about page if you want. So I'm going to save that as it is. Leave the category uncategorized. Featured, no. I'm just going to set all those, leave all those settings as the default. Now if I close this, now we can see both of my articles are being displayed in the article manager. If I refresh my home page, you'll notice that now only my first blog post is in there. That about page is not being shown yet. That navigation, we can see we have previous and next. That ties into those navigation options that I mentioned earlier under the options tab of the article manager, where we had that navigation between articles of the same category. If I click uncategorized, it's going to give me a blog layout, and that will show me both of these articles since they are both in this category. And I'm going to tell you how we can change the way that looks in a later chapter, I believe the next one. What I want to get into here is how we can add a link to the About Us page directly on the main menu. To do that, we have to use the menu manager, and we are going to go to Menus and Main Menu. So the main menu is this menu that's showing up here over on the right. Right now we just have Home, and the Home link is set to show featured articles. As we would expect, we're going to create a new menu item. I'm going to title it About Us, and the alias will just be About again. The menu item type, there's dozens of different menu item types. The menu item that I'm looking for is just the one that displays a single article. So we want to access the menu item types from the articles component, and we want to select the single article. I'm going to show you what these other options do later. Single article, select an article. So I select my article, and I select the About Us page. And now, menu items, just like categories, they can have kind of that parent-child relationship where some menu items are sub-items of other menu items. For now, I want this to be a top-level menu item, so I'm just going to set that to no parent. Publishing can be published, unpublished, or trashed, just like articles. If we don't want this to be showing, we can set it to unpublished. Article options also have start and finish dates and access levels. Very similar to articles, just now they apply to this particular menu item. And again, we're going to get into menus in a later chapter. I do want to mention the options tab. Since this is a menu item type of single article, these are those same options in a third place for showing the hits, the create date, the author, the category, the intro text, all that stuff. The same set of options, but now they can be set at the menu item level. So we have 3 different places now where we've seen this same option set in the article itself, in the global articles component options, and then finally in this menu item options. So don't get those confused. It can be a little confusing until you figure out how it works. Let me tell you which takes precedence. So if we don't change anything, we just leave everything as the default, it's going to use the options that we set in the articles options for the articles component. So when we clicked options under the article manager, those are the default options. Now, if I set the options at the menu item level, they will override any of the article options or the default options. So it overrides everything if I set it at the menu item level. Finally, if I don't have a link in the menu to an article and I change the settings at the article level, it will override the global options. So the global options are just the default options. And then if I set them at the article level, it overrides that. If I set them at the menu item level, it overrides everything. So that's why we have them in all these different places. So if I save and close, now I have home and about us. I refresh my home page, and now the about us item is being shown in the menu. So now I can easily get to that about us page and see the article itself. If I want to get rid of the title at the menu item level and this navigation, I could do that. So let me just show you how that works. So we go back to that about us page as the menu item. I go to the options, say I hide the title, and I hide the navigation. I close that. I refresh the article. Now you can see that next button disappeared and the title disappeared. If I go back to the article manager and I go to that about us page, you can see that here it still says title show. So even though it is set to show under the article options, the menu options overrid it and the title is hidden. That's just kind of to hopefully give you a concrete example of how the hierarchy of settings works as far as options per particular items and menu items and component options and all that. All right, so thank you for sticking with me throughout this lesson. I know this was a bit longer than the other ones. I hope you learned a decent amount about article management in Joomla. We learned how to create articles, how to use the editor, how to set some article options, how to add articles to menus, how to add intro images and full images, how the page breaks work, and the read more breaks work. So in the next chapter, I'm going to talk more in detail about how categories work. If you want, I'm creating kind of like a chapter 4B video on how to use the media manager. You can also check out the articles on my website, of course, the guide's there. There's also a full page on media management if you want to take a look at that. So thanks for watching, and next time we're going to learn about categories. So bye.